allegation is James Wilt.
Hello, sir. Name and where you live, please.
My name is James Wilt. I live in West Broadway, Winnipeg.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, members of the Winnipeg Police Board. My name is James Wilt, and I'm speaking on behalf of a recently formed group called Winnipeg Police Cause Harm. I'm here to provide an opposing voice to the Winnipeg Police Service's proposed multi-year budget. I've reread my presentation in the wake of the police shooting last night. I got this shirt that I'm wearing printed yesterday afternoon. It lists the names of the people who have been killed by Winnipeg police in 2019. Chad Williams on January 11th, Macho Amadou on February 23rd, Sean Thompson on June 26th, and Randy Cochran on July 14th. The blank spaces represent the 3 people killed in police custody whose names we have not yet been released.
Sorry, I don't want to stop you. I want people to hear you. So if you get really close to the mic online, they won't.
Sure.
It'll get muffled. So you don't have to get close. Then
Okay.
you can
Sure.
back.
This is okay?
Yeah,
Great.
that's perfect. I wanted to make sure people could hear you well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Whose names have not yet been released. One died on April 16th, another on August 2nd, and another on September 30th. The dots before Chad's name were to represent those who have been killed in previous years, and the dots after Randy's for those who will be killed after this presentation. The shooting last night of a person at the 7-Eleven on Ellis and Arlington, leaving them in critical condition, was completely avoidable. There were many other methods that the police could have used to de-escalate the situation, including physically giving them space, trying to talk them down, restraining them using the many personnel on hand, or pepper spraying them, just like an officer pepper sprayed a cyclist in April for asking him to turn off his high beams in a residential area. Experts in mental health, harm reduction, and conflict resolution know of these alternatives and use them every single day. None of these were attempted before shooting many bullets into the victim. We do not know the victim's mental state at the time of this alleged robbery. What we do know is that this shooting, if it ends in their death, will be the 8th police killing of this year and only the latest fully preventable example of how the police do not prevent harm, but in fact cause it. I did not intend the ellipses on the shirt to become so necessary so fast. I will now turn to my original presentation. While a 2% increase in an annual funding to the police is smaller than the department has received in the past, it is increasing an already extremely bloated budget that is directly taking funds from empirically proven solutions to public safety. A 2% increase to a department that received $301 million in 2019 is considerably more funding than a department like Transit that only received $70 million from the city. And it's far, far more than the 0.5% increase to community services, which received less than 1/3 of the police's operating budget in 2019. As the last alternative budget by the Canadian Centre of Policy Alternatives put it, the WPS budget is a municipal emergency that must be addressed with urgency and structural changes. The police's public discussions about their supposedly difficult budget situation do not take this into account. The police do not mention that their share of the city's operating budget has increased from 16.9% in the year 2000 to 26.8% in 2019. The police do not mention that their continually increased demands for more and more money to hire more officers is directly taking away money from transit, community services, and critical municipal-led harm reduction projects like safe consumption sites and public housing. The police do not mention and in fact use graphs in their presentations in a very disingenuous way that Winnipeg has a relatively high officer per civilian ratio compared to other major Canadian cities, 184 per 100,000 citizens, compared to 167 in Toronto, 153 in Calgary, and 122 in Ottawa. The police don't mention that the average police salary is $104,000 per year, and if salaries were capped at $80,000, the city would immediately save $50 million per year. The police also conveniently don't mention that the province has committed $10 million to downtown foot patrols and that the city's deputy mayor is now publicly considering rerouting revenue from cutting pensions into frontline police activities. A 2% increase for the police is clearly not the end of the story, unlike for every other department. The city is considering closing libraries, pools, and rec facilities while the police are effectively blackmailing the city by pulling officers from traffic enforcement and check stops and shutting down district stations. If any other department tried to pull these stunts, which are actively undermining public safety, they would be severely reprimanded. The police are using budget proceedings to flex their power against City Council and are producing a state of fear among the public about things like liquor store thefts and property crimes that are caused by situations of poverty and desperation as outlined by previous speakers. We need to talk seriously about the role of the police as a response to issues of poverty, lack of housing, decline of mental health and substance use resources, and intergenerational trauma resulting from ongoing colonialism against Indigenous peoples. As mentioned in my unfortunate intro, Winnipeg police have killed 7 people this year, possibly 8. A recent investigation by CBC found that in Winnipeg, Indigenous people represent on average 10.6% of the population, but account for nearly 2/3 of victims of police shootings. Of the 460 people who were killed by police since the year 2000, 70.3% had mental health issues or substance abuse issues or both. The Winnipeg Police have caused many other harms this year alone, including hitting a pedestrian in an unmarked vehicle, another blowing through a stop sign and hitting a van that hospitalized 6 people, participating in a humiliating photo of an inebriated man passed out on a bus bench that the police originally denied, and macing a cyclist who asked an officer to turn off his high beams in a residential area. The Winnipeg Police have also been accused by the director of the Independent Investigation Unit, or the IIU, with interfering with investigations, including not flagging incidents and keeping cadets from being interviewed. In July, it was reported that an alleged sexual assault by a police officer had not been reported to the IIU. Winnipeg police officers have been investigated this year alone for breaking a 60-year-old man's arm during an arrest in June, and breaking a 36-year-old man's arm during an arrest in October, impaired driving in a still-running vehicle, and improper storage of a restricted weapon. Officers have been found to have committed egregious conduct when they unlawfully entered a hotel room and assaulted 3 people inside in 2014, demoted for threatening and using abusive language against a hotel owner, found guilty of pointing a shotgun at a female colleague, and also found guilty for unlawfully searching a bag during a 2015 traffic stop. Last month, a former officer was also found guilty of impaired driving causing death and fleeing the scene of a crash in 2017. All of these investigations cost money, including a $97,000 payout to the family that was assaulted in 2014. This is not good value for public funds. Police speak often about how they're not equipped to deal with mental health crises. This is very true, but the response to that fact is not to increase funding to the police. Police greatly escalate situations, as we saw last night, particularly for those who have issues with mental health and substance use or a history of traumatic experience with the police. Incarceration likewise breaks up families and communities, worsening mental health conditions. It's well known that the police are an institutionally reactionary department. They'll admit that themselves, that respond to crises after they have happened. But police often worsen situations as well, taking a person who is in need of food, housing, healthcare, or income and incarcerating them, or worse, for daring to be in the downtown while Indigenous. Winnipeg Police led the process of introducing security at the Millennium Library and inflating the threat of liquor store thefts to the point of feeling like we're on the brink of civil war. Police have gone door to door in the West End, breeding suspicions among neighbors at a time when communities should be coming together. Chief Danny Smythe has spoken out about the relationship that he sees between a surge in meth use and property crimes, yet has opposed actual solutions to issues related to drug use, stating, and I quote, "I don't know that anyone is set up to do safe injection sites for meth. I don't see that as being part of the solution here." This is in spite of the fact that Saskatoon is actively working to introduce a safe consumption site specifically to help deal with overdoses and health issues relating to meth use. Police are not only ineffective, but are actively harming the city's most vulnerable by promoting solutions based on abstinence, incarceration, and surveillance that reject everything we know about the relationship between poverty and so-called crime. Continuing to increase funding to this reactionary department while depriving other services of money is a conscious decision to support and reinforce policing methods that result in greater displacement, incarceration, and deaths of vulnerable people. I'm sure this board is most interested in what our group is proposing as a solution. It's quite simple. Freeze the police budget and begin to defund it, investing the $300 million per year currently consumed by the police in public housing, harm reduction facilities, 24-hour safe spaces, transit, libraries, food justice programs, snow clearing, pools, rec centers, and income supports. Implement a hiring freeze and do not replace retirement-eligible officers when retirements happen. Sell the police helicopter and demilitarize the police force, including decommissioning assault rifles in the armored vehicle. On the issue of drug use, advocate for the decriminalization and provision of a safe supply of drugs, and instruct remaining officers to stand down from policing drug production, use, and possession. Fund safe consumption sites and Narcan training and distribution. Adopt a municipal framework that sees drug use through the lenses of harm reduction and public health, not criminality. Stop policing people panhandling, sleeping outside, and policing so-called disorder. Stop policing adult consensual sex work. Stop reporting allegedly undocumented people to the CBSA. On the issue of intimate partner violence, provide housing, low-barrier shelters, safe spaces, childcare, access to good employment, and counseling so women can leave toxic relationships before it's too late. By its own metrics, the existing criminal justice system does not protect women from violence, with only 11.5% of sexual assaults reported to police in Canada resulting in a conviction against the perpetrator, and only 6.5% resulting in jail time. For services or locations that encounter incidents of violence or harassment, employ mental health experts, social workers, and crisis workers trained in de-escalation, conflict resolution, and harm reduction, and with an explicit mandate not to work with the police but to direct people to counseling and resources. The crises that Winnipeg is facing right now are poverty, lack of housing, withdrawal of public services. In a single word, austerity. The response to this cannot be doubling down on policing and incarceration, which only worsen the situation at immense financial and social costs. We must make a deliberate decision as a city at this point to choose another path, one grounded in anti-racism, harm reduction, well-funded public services, and a commitment to serving people over profits. This is the real solution to ending violence and crime in Winnipeg. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Hang on 10 minutes. That's perfect. Well done.
Thanks.
Any questions from any members of the board? I absolutely hear your frustration. And I just want to make sure that you know that we are listening. And I just like to just make sure that we're clear on everything, because one of my biggest things of being in office is I don't think we're very open about what happens at City Hall. The police funding is similar to the transit. Transit's, over $230 million. So not as much as the police, granted. And
But is that including revenue from fares?
Yes.
Right. So I'm talking about municipal funding.
Right. That's
Yeah.
municipal, though, right?
Yeah.
Police also includes revenues from fines, criminal searches, and all that, just like that department does. There's revenues that have to be generated by police. They're required to generate so much revenue.
May I respond to the point about transit?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so the fares are a user fee, and so that means that the costs are downloaded on the individual who is using the service of transit.
The city
That's
city pays 41% of that.
right. They pay $70 million a year, and that's
Yeah.
and
about
yeah,
70.
yeah, and that's true. Property taxes and all the rest.
Fair enough.
What I'm saying, that's the figure that I'm identifying as $70 million.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, yeah. Because
Thank
the
you.
police receive funding from the federal government, as does and the provincial government, as does transit. So we're clear.
Sure, but in the last budget, the police received $301 million from the municipal government, correct?
Not in total, no. That's not from the municipal budget. That's of various sources of the budget, including revenue, provincial grants, and federal grants.
Can you tell me how much the city provided to the police?
Exactly?
If
Probably
you
a
can.
large portion of that, but
Okay.
it's hard to say because the province puts money towards policing. Maybe you could answer that question.
Oh, 255 million.
Okay, that still makes it the largest department in the city, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
saying that you're wrong.
No.
I want to make sure.
No,
you're
I
clear.
appreciate the clarification.
And the 10 million for the foot patrols, just so, again, to be clear, because we have spoken to many people, and that is the perception, but that perception is not correct. The province is putting $10 million towards downtown safety.
Which I identified in my presentation. I said that the province is funding $10 million. And my point
Foot
about...
patrols, I just want to make sure. That
No, of course, but my point about making that is that the money that the police receive from the city is not the only money that they receive.
Fair point, very valid. Okay, and supervised sites you had mentioned for a little bit, so you're not talking about for meth.
Yeah.
You're talking about for...
No, I am.
meth.
Yeah, like the one that they're opening in Saskatoon in 2020.
The one in Saskatoon is for meth?
Yes, it is, explicitly, yeah. Aid Saskatoon is constructing it. And Aid Saskatoon is the name of the organization. One of the interesting things that Winnipeg City Council might be interested in, and this committee, is that they are not hiring security guards. They're hiring support workers who have a specific mandate to link people who are going through moments of crisis and are acting out in violent ways with resources.
But that's an independent body doing that one?
Aid Saskatoon is an organization leading the way on that, yeah.
Thanks for the tip.
For sure.
I appreciate it. Any other questions? Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
You bet. Next delegation.
The next delegation, Hilda Anderson Pierce.